Hi everyone. In this video, I would like to introduce problem solving, or basically word problems. So the first step is really the hardest step of problem solving, and that is to understand and set up your problem. And this is the step that probably takes the longest too. So the first thing you want to do for any problem is to obviously understand the problem. So that's going to mean you need to read the problem as many times as it takes to actually understand what's happening. So for most students, that's going to be more than once. Even for myself, I often have to read things 2, 3, or 4, 5 times until I really understand what it's asking of me. You may also want to underline or take notes or draw pictures if that helps. A big thing that I have my students do here, which is not always consistent from text to text or anything like that, but I highly recommend is to write the goal of the problem. So to literally write out goal and what you're trying to find or solve there. I find it really helps for two reasons. One is because it helps you to figure out what your variable is going to be and represent. Because your variable is going to represent the unknown in the problem or what you're trying to find. And the second thing I find that it also helps to do is to redirect you at the end of the problem. So some problems are pretty quick and they're not as difficult, but others that are longer and a little bit more challenging, sometimes we get to the end of the problem and we have totally forgotten what we were even trying to do in the first place or what we were trying to find or answer. So having that goal written out not only helps us with our variable, but again, it kind of helps to close that loop at the end and remind ourselves what we were trying to find. And the other thing you're going to want to do, and again, this is something that I highly recommend that may not always be as clear in certain texts or other videos and things, is to actually define your variable. So I'm going to use X here, but you can use any letter you want for your variables and give it meaning. So what does X represent? X equals, I don't know, the length of the side of the pool, or X equals the original price of the pocketbook, whatever it is. So give it meaning. And again, this will really help you later on, not only to write the equation and things, but at the end of the problem to answer the question. If you have more than one unknown, meaning you're trying to figure out more than one thing, then you're going to write anything else in terms of the same variable. I'm going to recommend we don't use multiple variables. What happens is when we use multiple variables, it just gets more complicated. So for instance, if you have two variables, you would need two different equations to solve that problem. Or if you had three variables, you would need three different equations. That tends to be pretty standard. So we're going to try to keep everything to just one variable. After you're set up, the next thing you're going to do is write some sort of equation that you're able to solve. Then you're going to solve the equation. And then the final step is to check your answer. Now, this step is a bit difficult because there's no perfect check for word problems. So you could check and plug it back into your equation just to make sure that you didn't do anything wrong on the math side of it. But the big thing you want to ask yourself is, does it make sense, right? So if I was looking for the length of a side of a swimming pool and my answer was negative, that probably doesn't make sense. Or if my answer was, 5 inches, again, doesn't really make sense. So I don't have a perfect check here, but you do want to at least look at your answer and see, does it make sense? Does it seem like this is logical? Or read back through and make sure there was nothing else that you missed, right? So does it make sense in the context of the problem? Now I'm going to start with two basic examples here that don't have a lot of background or context to them, but they're good examples to start with. So here's the first one. And again, as you're watching this video, you may want to pause it, write the question down first for your notes for yourself, and then when you're ready, come back in. So the first thing you want to do, again, is read through a couple times. Now, I'm going to read it through once with you guys, but I've already read the problem a few times at home. So again, this is a great point where if you need to pause the video and read it through multiple times yourself, go ahead and do that. So it says twice a number added to 7 is the same as 3 subtracted from the number. Find the number. All right, so right away, I can see my goal right here. What am I trying to do? I'm trying to find this number, right? So our goal is to find the number. And there's only one thing I'm looking for, so that is going to be my variable. Now, you can use n for number here if you prefer. I'm going to just use x. So I'm going to let x equal the number, right? The number that I'm trying to find. And I can also read through again, do some highlighting, take some notes, whatever you find helpful here. So I do see a lot of keywords as well. I see twice a number, and twice, remember, means that you're multiplying that by 2. I see added to 7, so I'm looking at something being added with 7. Is the same as is a keyword for equals. And then I see 3 subtracted from the number. And again, watch out. Remember we talked about those keywords of from and than can reverse the order. So this is something else that's jumping out at me that I need to pay attention to. So now I'm going to go just slowly and write my equation. So I see twice a number. I'm using x to represent the number. I know twice means to multiply it by 2. So that would be 2x. Added to 7, so plus 7, is the same as, is equals. And then here it's a little bit tricky. 3 subtracted from the number. Again, I'm doing subtraction, but that word from is going to change the order. So it's actually going to be the number first and then minus 3. So this is what my equation looks like. Now I'm going to solve the equation. This is usually the easier step. Not that solving is easy, but compared to setting up the equation. So I'm going to start by bringing my x's to the left here. So I'm going to subtract x to both sides. 2x minus 1x is just x. And then I'm going to go ahead and bring the 7 to the other side. And I have x equals negative 10. Now, that would be my final answer. We do typically like to write our final answers in a sentence form when dealing with word problems. So I may want to write something like the number, right, because that's what I was looking for, is negative 10. Now, again, you can check this. So for instance, I could plug this back into my equation, make sure I didn't make any mistakes with my math there. I can also check it in the wording of the problem instead. So twice negative 10 would be negative 20. And if I add that to positive 7, I get negative 13. Well, on the other side, I'd be subtracting 3 from this number, and negative 10 minus 3 is also negative 13. So this seems like this works out perfectly. For my next example, again, I'm going to do just a very similar one here. Twice the sum of a number and 4 is the same as 4 times the number decreased by 12. And same goal here, find the number. So x is going to be my number here, so the number, and I'm only looking for one thing. So I'm ready to move on and actually start going through that equation a little bit more carefully, or in those keywords. So the first thing I see is twice. So again, we're multiplying by 2, the sum of a number and 4. Now this is a little bit tricky. Notice how it says twice the sum. It doesn't say twice a number, it says twice a sum. So we're multiplying the 2 by some entire sum. So that sum of a number and 4, which is x plus 4, is sort of staying together, and the whole thing is getting multiplied by 2. So this one's a little trickier. When you see twice the sum or twice the difference for subtraction, then you're multiplying by the entire sum or difference there. Is the same as, again, means equals. Here, 4 times the number. Now, this is what we're more used to. 4 times a number. So 4x decreased by 12. Decrease means subtract. There's no from or than there, so it's just regular subtraction. And now I can go ahead and solve. I'm going to start by distributing. I have 2x plus 8 equals 4x minus 12. I'm going to subtract the 2x from both sides. Now, again, you may want to pause the video and do some practicing here. You should get the same answer as me, even if we, solve in a little bit different order. I'm going to add 12 after that. So I have 20 equals 2x. Then I'm going to divide both sides by 2, and I get x is equal to 10. So the number here that I was looking for is 10. And again, I don't have any perfect checks for word problems because you do have to set up the equation on your own, but you can make sure it makes sense. So if I do twice the sum of a number and 4, okay, well, 10 plus 4 is 14. And if I multiply that by 2, I would get 28. is that the same as 4 times the number decreased by 12? Well, 4 times 10 is 40. If we minus 12 from that, we do get 28. So it does seem like it's working out. But again, there's no perfect check. So you're just going to do the best you can to verify that, on your end, it looks good, right? I set up my equation well. The answer seems to check. It makes sense. And unfortunately, that's kind of the best you can do. So you just want to read really carefully, make sure you watch out for keywords, take your time with them. And again, make sure your answer at the end does make sense.